Hey, it's Mac with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and it is Thursday. It's October 12th. This will be our chart lesson for the day. And you can see we had a big bearish out. We rallied strongly, failed, and then sold off extremely well. And then the market pulled back and took some of that back. Um, we've opened since then and still kind of pushing higher. Still a relatively bearish day, but I'm not sure if we're going to get any follow through. It looks like we're finding support right along that midline there. So is that just a pullback to test it after going through and we're going to go higher, or we're going to continue lower? We'll have to see what tomorrow brings. But that's what the daily chart looks like, and it looks very similar on the 2000 tick intraday chart. We rallied higher only to see it turn down, and then we had this strong sell-off that finally found the bottom, and we took back a portion of it. So you'll see that when we flip over. A couple of things before we get on to the chart lesson. Um, no chart lessons on Fridays. Most of you already know that anyway. But there will be no mid-morning chart tomorrow either. I'm going to have to take the day off. I will not be. I have a little family emergency that came up. Nothing serious, nothing bad. I just need to take off tomorrow. So I'm not going to come in tomorrow. And so it won't be any mid-morning chart. I apologize, but I tried to get a workaround where I could at least come in and do the mid-morning chart, but I'm going to have to be out from maybe 8:30 to lunchtime no matter what. So I'm just not even going to come in, and so won't be any chart lesson tomorrow. We'll pick back up Monday um, and go from there. But let's flip over to the 2000 tick intraday chart, work through the trades, take a look at the chart, work through the trades, and we'll wrap this week. Okay, you can see here that we had the big move down. We found some support, and then looked like we were just going to get a two-legged correction and head lower again. But we continued to find support there and kind of traded on up until finally this thing just sold off. And you can see the bottom just fell out of it. Boom. I don't know if some news item came out around this time. As usual, it doesn't really matter, but for some reason it turned down here. And then this was a little steep, and so we leveled out and went into a little flatter. If you're looking for a measured move, it was right in here, but we just shot through that and just continued lower. And notice once we found a bottom here, we rallied back and we closed right above that measured move. So um, those areas are usually very important, and you can see this one was because we came back, and we couldn't go much higher than that, and we closed right just above that. So, but yeah, this measured move was much more than, and it just continued lower. We just went into a slightly flatter channel, even though it's still really steep and really strong. And this thing just shot on down. We did recover some of it, but still pretty bearish day there. So two measured legs down plus some. Uh, by the end of the day, it was just two measured legs down, though it looks like. So we'll see what tomorrow brings, if we're going to push on lower or what's going to happen. But we'll just have to wait and see. You had to be really patient this morning. Um, it was almost 9 o'clock before I saw a trade that I was willing to take. Of course, we had all this 7:30 news, so you really couldn't trade till after 7:30. And this was about over. Then we rallied here. I don't think you want to. This long here is a possibility. I didn't mark it. It's a possibility. That's the first break of this channel. You would expect that we'd probably get two legs back to the EMA first, but sometimes it could tick higher and trap you and run down. But that's a possibility, just to try to, if you got room between there and the EMA, maybe you try to ride that back. Um, we ran up and we just kind of chopped around before it started lower. This is just all real choppy. There's no setup up here. There's no signal bar. We came back here to the EMA and just got a first entry, but again, the signal bar is probably okay, but we're in that channel and we just found support here, so you don't know that this may not be a range day at this point. But it doesn't take long that we come back to the trend line and we turn down right here, because we drew it off those first two. I originally had it a little steeper, but I ended up adjusting it a little bit once we got these moves right here, you can obviously tell it's turning down off some. There's the EMA there, but there's something else. So you got to figure that trend line probably comes across there. Uh, so that I just think it's too risky entering right here on a first entry, uh, and you never get a lower high, and then you get another first entry right here, and then you're just kind of chopping sideways. This is really a range right here. Just to clarify it so you can see it. And there's just no entry there. There's a little breakout pullback short here, which it might have been okay if it would have broke lower, but then you get an inside bar, and then it barely breaks lower, and then you got congestion again. So you just can't go short right there. And then you get another sideways, and it's just looking congested again before it drops on down. They're just kind of chopping around. You're really inside this range right here, and it drops down a measured move. Then it rallies. You can't go long in here. This is way too steep and way too strong. Don't try to go long here. Runs up here and it fails out the upside and turns down off a measured move there. I like. There's plenty of. You figure this thing's going to go lower. It's just a first entry, but you can trade this as a failed breakout, and I think you're fine to go short right there. And you can see it drops down really quickly and off it goes. Comes back here. And you really get a triple test across here, but that signal bar is not bearish enough, and then it looks a little congested right there. So even though you do have a what I would call a triple test right off the key entry point, unless you got a better signal bar. If you had a real bearish signal bar here, I'd say if it breaks lower, take it. It's just a first entry, so you really need the triple test across here. And that's really a lower high too. So. And then, of course, you did have your break here, and that's another reason. If you didn't have a break here yet, I'd say maybe you might even risk that. But it just looks too congested. It looks too neutral, especially since you got a break and more than a couple of swings down already. You end up would have worked, but you don't know that in advance. I don't think you want to go long here. I think you need a high or low or something, and you don't get it. And then next thing you know, you got two legs up, way away from the EMA. I like going short there. It's a big bearish bar. It's risky. You really should wait on the lower high, which is here, and then it's too congested. So it does make a little tick up then turn down, but you're still going short right into that EMA while everything's above it, and we may be in a reversal here. So you just can't take that trade. And as I was concerned, you do get a two-legged correction, and looks like you're going to make another leg up. It doesn't turn out to be a measured leg, which would tell you that it's probably going to sell off pretty strongly. It takes a little while, but it eventually does sell off a little stronger there. But that's still a pretty good move down right there. But maybe you take this second entry. It's a little aggressive, but it could be the center of a pattern, and we could be heading lower. So maybe it's worth risking. Again, the lower highs here, and it's not any good. And then suddenly we turn up on the second entry. I don't think you can take this second entry here. The signal bar is no good. You do get a higher low right here, so definitely take that. There's a reversal here, but this is not a place you're looking one. This is looking really sideways. We got a double top now. It's really hard to know if we're going to go lower or higher here. So just after this trade, don't try going long. And of course, it runs up and gets this big bearish bar way away from the EMA. So maybe you, once again, it's similar to this. You're better off on a lower high, but you don't always get one. How much risk do you want to take? Maybe you take that trade. We don't quite have a measured move, so it's early, but you already have the break of the green trend and a new high. And this one had already played out. This one's played out because it's two legs down. So yeah, there's a good chance we're going lower from there, and we do. You might have said, hey, this is a failed second entry long, but that's too congested. And then we're just chopping around here. This one is tempting, but there's not room to get out right there. And you just can't go short into that support. It's not worth the risk. And even though it broke lower, it makes a measured move and runs back up. And then we're just chopping along again. And once again, you get another little triple test here. But you don't have room to get out. And you see this time it doesn't work. It might have went low enough. I don't even think it went low enough. I think you would have got burned there. This is why you don't do that with you don't have room. And believe it or not, there just is 5 ticks. But you can't risk that. if you took it, you got lucky because it could have bounced right here or right here and you wouldn't have got out. You don't want to go long there either. It's too congested. Runs up here. There's clearly a hidden second entry there, but your signal bar is no good. And then finally it bounces again. Not the best signal bar. I think it probably closes in the upper 2/3. It's close. It's real close. It is a second entry. It is a bounce off this low. We do have a close outside and a new low. There's plenty of room back to that high there. And we've been going back and forth, back and forth. So maybe you take that trade. Again, some kind of breakout pullback, high or low or something here is better. But that's the signal bar on the, you can't take that. And then this is an inside bar, and even if it was, it didn't bounce off the support yet. It's a closed outside up, but I'd really want it to bounce there, and probably more than once. I'd want to test it more than once. It runs on up. You do get two-legged correction, move to a new high, and then it's selling off again. I don't see any longs or shorts here. No short here. The signal bar is no good. You might say, okay, this is a lower high, but look how far it's moved. I don't think you can treat that as a lower high. It's just a first entry. We come down here, and of course we bounce and prove this trend line, and then we're just chopping along. This one is tempting, but it makes that new high. It does close back inside the channel, and it is relatively bearish. You could probably argue that it's a second entry. At least it is by the counts. So maybe you take that one. Again, we're in an uptrend. We're trying to go higher. I say you skip it, hoping that you get a setup down here, and you don't. You actually get a close outside, and it takes off and with no setup. Then you're just chopping along here again. We're underneath the EMA, and we tested it 1, 2, 3, 4 times. It looks a little congested. It's relatively bearish. Maybe you take that trade because it's probably going to trap people. Try to go higher 1, 2, 3 times. So it's another one maybe, but we just have the break and we don't have a new high. But you can see it's testing not only the resistance across here of the range, but it's testing the EMA, which is just similar, the same thing. It's a triple test on both of them. So maybe you take that trade if you have room to get out before here. I'm not super crazy about it. Then you get this breakout pullback, and you do get a higher low here, but you'd have to be trading a failure, and it's not really where you're looking for one. You want to see that down here on a trend line of a strong trend, and that's not what this is actually an uptrend, but you can see it swinging back and forth above and below the EMA. You can really trade this both ways. It's not a strong trend where you can only trade it with the trend. But it runs up. You get a triple test here, but no signal bar, no setup. And then finally, if you look, this is a new high here basically. So you get a leg down, a little two-legged correction, another leg down. And so that's a failed second entry long if it turns lower here. And it pretty much confirms that trend line. So I like going short there just to try to ride it back to here. You would expect, hey, maybe it's going to bounce here. But we did have a close outside. And now there's two legs up, so maybe the whole trend's over. So that's another reason to kind of like that, because if this keeps going, you're getting in it earlier, and you're probably going to get a runner on it too. And of course you do. It looks like it's going to fail here, but it just keeps going, and you don't really get a chance to enter it anywhere else here. It just keeps dropping and dropping. It's not even coming back to the EMA, just first entries. I'm sorry, it doesn't even come back to the trend line, but till finally here. Now, we've talked about this before. Pretty much any good signal bar that comes back to the trend line in a trend like this, it's really strong and really, it just keeps going. You can just about take those. I'm going to mark them green because they're not for, this is for more experienced traders. But you'll see this a lot when you get a really strong trend, and you know, because the corrections cannot even really go up, they just go sideways. And notice how the corrections can't even go back up, they just kind of go sideways back to the trend line. So wherever you get a good signal bar right off the trend line, you just about can take it. I mean, this one would have been right here instead of right here. And there's 3 trades right there. and they all would have worked, would have been good for a scalp. But if you're not a super experienced, already pretty much making money, then you get a second entry right here with perfect second entry, first break of the trend line, a great signal bar that's 6 ticks, so you can even get in it with an 8 tick rule. And if you don't like that one, you get a lower high here. And it's also a first entry, second entry that fails. And it's a lower high, again, 6 ticks, so you can use the 8 tick rule and you get another opportunity. And this thing, instead of just making a couple legs down and reversing, it just goes into a more flatter trend, but it's still super strong. You can still see all the small bars all the way down, and it's the same thing. If you realize what's going on, any decent signal bar off that trend line you could take. So that means you could probably, you might even take that one. It's not bearish enough, and it is a second entry though, but you know, we could be coming to an end here because we do have a break here. We really doesn't, not till we come back to here again. Actually, it's looking pretty strong down here, but when it comes back to here and verifies that trend line, then you know for sure this one's close to not even getting back to it. I think originally I had it drawn a little lower, and it probably does touch it because I'm not quite to the closes on these next couple. So this one probably is close. I'll go ahead and give it a green one, but it's pushing it. But then you get one right here. This one may not have enough room because this is inside the, because you got this range, you don't have much room. But this one you probably would be fine taking it. Even this one maybe, because even though you're getting some support there, it's just because prices are trying to get back to the trend line and they can't go lower, but they can't go higher either. So it's still pretty bearish. And so I'm a little less hesitant on this one. But I still think you can make the argument that it's such a strong downtrend. But here we came back here, right off the key entry point. I'll pick that up. Here we came back here. I even marked this one. It's technically not the signal bar, but it's only like a tick difference. And it's right off the key entry point. It's very bearish, and it's even a second entry. So if it breaks below that, we're probably going lower. So you might even risk that one. And I like this one because it's a triple test, plus it's off the key entry point, and it's a bearish bar. That's the reason I marked that one red. And then we bounce here. We get this big rally up. And no longs there, though. You don't want to go long. Okay, as I said, you can't really go long there. You really need to get this trend established. Maybe even right there, it's probably going to be up here before you'd start to be interested in longs. And because this has been a really strong downtrend, and this could just be a 2 legs up and maybe one more push. But once you confirm that trend line, that's the third touch. Notice your first 2 swings, and you confirmed it here. It's a second entry right here, but with all 3 of those in the congested, I'd wait and see if you get a higher low. And that comes right here. You get a good signal bar. Come back here, and you get your first break. But again, it's a good signal bar, and you could call that a first entry, second entry failure, a continuation pattern. It's probably going to run to make a new high, even although now that you got a close outside. And you can see that's pretty much what happens. It runs up here. Looks like it's going to sell off, and then suddenly you get a higher low here. I mean, it's the problem is this close outside is real questionable. I mean, it's there. Is it convincing? Maybe I don't have it drawn right, and maybe not, because all that's fitting across the top. So I may not have had it drawn exactly right. It still fits right there. So I think that's why sometimes you want to just double check if you get a little something that looks like it might be a close outside, but it's not 100% sure. Now here it's obvious. You close, you get a couple of bars that close, and it's way down here. It's obvious. That's a convincing close outside, and then we push to a new high, and then it just goes flat after that. Of course, that's after 2:30. This is right at the cutoff. This bar closed at 14:30, which would be 2:30 and 27 seconds. So that's close enough. It's a high or low. It's a second entry because this is a new high up here. So you get a first entry, pull back second entry. So it's a high or low, a second entry long. It looks like that's your convincing close outside. And it's engulfing bar too. It broke lower and turned and went up. Because of that bar um, has so much stem and very little body, I'd wait for this to close and then go long above the close. I think that closes, that qualifies. It's close enough because this has turned into a pretty strong rally here. The problem is this is just your first break, and you're probably going to get that new high regardless. It's right at 2:30, so you don't want to take any chances. So definitely wait for that bar to close and make sure it's bullish enough. And there it is. That's the way I saw it today. We really were looking at two legs down, and then I mean, that's a correction. It's not super strong. Really, what prices did, you had the measured move, and they were way oversold, and they just kind of take that back, and they end up closing right there at the measured move. So that could be an indication we're going to go lower tomorrow, get some follow-through selling. But until tomorrow, we just won't know. And once again, no chart lesson tomorrow on Fridays. I don't do them on Fridays. And also no mid-morning chart because I have to be out tomorrow morning. So nothing I can do about it. I've tried to get a workaround. I can't do it. So I'll be back Monday. But anyway, that's going to wrap it up for today. Hope you had a good week. Hope you had a good day today. You had some really strong sell-offs here a couple of times. And so, again, if you recognize these strong sell-offs, anything that comes back to that key entry point that gives you a good signal bar, consider it. Doesn't matter what the normal setups look like on that kind of stuff. It's just so bearish. If the signal bar is good and you hadn't had a close outside that's convincing yet, maybe you take them. And you'll see over and over. Just go study charts. That's what we study our charts for. Go find charts with these kind of trends, draw the trends, and study them and watch what happens. Most every good signal bar off the key entry point, regardless of the type of setup, will continue the trend in the same direction. And you probably can see that on this first trend. We'll just look at it real quick. And you can see pretty much, I mean, we couldn't even get back to it here, but every bar that came back, I mean, I don't see one that's a good signal bar there. That's the reason I didn't mark it. But it really wasn't, you really didn't know it was that strong a trend yet. It's when it continues on here. And you start to see these little bars with lots of dojis and lots of stems on both sides. It doesn't look it, but these are strong, strong trends. And they're so strong that they can't really correct. They just go sideways. That's why you drop down, work over, drop down, work over. Or if it's going up, it'll jump up, work over, jump up, work over to the trend line, jump up. And so if you're not familiar with that and aren't used to seeing it, you don't see many setups, and there aren't because there's no corrections. This is just sideways stuff. That's the biggest correction of this whole thing now. There's a little bit of one here, but then you get this, then there's just not any big correction. There's like 3 bars there. This one only has, I mean, really only trending, you only have 1, 2, 3, 4 bars, and but you do get a pretty convincing close outside there. But this is a failed breakout as well, so that's another reason you can take that. It doesn't have to be off the trend line. It's just a first entry. But if this would have been a little better signal bar, I probably would have marked it at least green. But it is what it is, and we can't change that. So, and if you follow the rules, don't break the rules. They're there for a reason, and that's usually the difference between a winner and a loser. That once you kind of understand this stuff is how disciplined you are and whether or not you follow the rules and stay disciplined and wait for the best setups. If you don't, you probably lose money because you take too many gambles. You take too many trades that are a gamble. You don't want to ever gamble. You want to, when you take a trade, you want to say, I know, I'm confident that this is a 100% sure thing. And if you're not, don't take it. If you are and you take it and it fails, then go back and study that trade like crazy till you can figure out what you missed, because there's always something you missed. Always. You know, people ask me a lot of times, was this a good trade? Did I just had bad luck? No. If it failed, you can find something that you missed that you're just not quite good enough to see yet, or either you just gambled and took a chance. So keep that in mind. But anyway, I'm going to wrap it up. We'll be back again Monday. I'm done for today, done for this week. This is Mac with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and we'll see you next time.